let's return to one of our top stories. Russian President Vladimir Putin is visiting occupied parts of the Ukrainian region of Kherson. Arise chief correspondent John Cookson has been monitoring developments and joins us now from London for more. Welcome to the show, John. Let's get straight into it. Now, how significant is it that Vladimir Putin is visiting his frontline troops, especially at this time?
It is significant. It's his second visit in as many months. He rarely leaves Moscow, but clearly this is an important mission for him to boost the morale, perhaps, of troops facing a possible Ukrainian onslaught, which, if leaked papers are to be believed from the Pentagon, is due to start on or around the 30th of April. The Russians very much dug in the south. I was down there in March and at the end of February earlier this year. And it was clear to myself and my camera lady, Faith Orr, that things were about to get more difficult for the people of the region with this expected Ukrainian assault on Russian forces. So he met with Colonel General Mikhail Treplinsky, who is the commander of Russian airborne forces, and also Colonel General Oleg Makarevich. Now, I would say one thing here. These images have come from Russian television, but they don't say when he was there. It could have been yesterday. It could have been 2 weeks ago, frankly. So with that caveat, we're looking at these images of inspecting troops, which are expected to be in action very, very soon.
Thank you, John. Now, what's the latest from the backgrounds, or the battlegrounds, I should say? Can you fill us in?
Well, the most intense fighting, of course, is in Bakhmut, which has been fought over for almost a year now. The Wagner forces acting on behalf of the Russian government. These are mercenaries, claim to have got more territory, although only a couple of weeks ago they claimed to have taken the whole city and hadn't. So without any journalism in the area, reporters are barred from the region. We have to rely on reports from the Russian and the Ukrainian government, both of which give spin to the story. So it's very hard to know exactly what's going on, but certainly fighting still very intense in Bakhmut. The Russians need to secure it, the city, to use it as a springboard to move elsewhere in the Donbass region. So although it's not making headlines at the moment and it doesn't figure in news bulletins around the world, the fighting is still very, very intense in Bakhmut, and thousands of Russian and Ukrainian soldiers are dying almost every week there.
Okay, let's move our attention quickly to the Wall Street Journal reporter who was in Moscow court this morning. Now, what's the likelihood of this case developing into a show trial, John?
Well, I think, frankly, it's already a show trial, isn't it? This was an appeal today against a ruling by a court that he should remain in custody until the trial begins. That was rejected today by the Moscow City Court. Evan Gershkovich, 31 years old, arrested after traveling to Yekaterinburg to report on what he says was an arms factory and people associated with it. The Russians accuse him of carrying out a spying mission, charges he absolutely denies. But look, he's a prominent American journalist, a real prize for the Russian propaganda machine. So frankly, he was never going to win this early stage of the hearing, and in fact his appeal against being held in detention was rejected today, and he's gone back to prison at Berfovtovo prison east of Moscow.
Noted, John. Thank you so much. Now, if he's convicted, what is the sentence likely to be?
Well, legal experts say 20 years, which for a 31-year-old man, of course, is a very, very long time. And now, what may happen here, and one hopes that this happens, is if he's convicted, and is given 20 years, that he's released after the trial has taken place. This has happened in the past, more recently in December with the US basketball star Brittany Griner. She was swapped with a Russian prisoner in America, Victor Bout, an arms dealer. So it may well be that although he's sentenced to 20 years, let's hope for his sake that there is some kind of prisoner swap with a Russian in America. But the trial is not likely to take place at least for 18 months to 2 years. So he has got 2 years in a Russian prison to serve. Now, this particular prison is the conditions are harsh. He'll share a cell with another prisoner. The cell itself is 12 foot by 9. There are 2 steel frame beds in there and 1 window, but you can't see. The only thing you can see out of the window is sky. And there'll be no other contact with other prisoners during this time. They're really, really harsh conditions in this particular jail.
I mean, John, we know that, Russia's justice system does guarantee defendants the right to a jury trial open to the public. But exemptions in the case of espionage mean that this reporter's trial is likely to be placed before a judge. Doesn't that already, looking at the history of espionage cases that usually end up in a guilty verdict, are we not seeing a case that is already set by precedent here?
I'm sorry to say it is a done deal. It will be a trial, probably behind closed doors, although if the Russians want to give publicity, they will do. And of course, we had the case yesterday, did we not, of the politician Karamurza being sentenced to 25 years in a Gulag-style prison. So clearly, the Kremlin wants to make an example of prisoners, and of course, as Gershkovich is American, that gives him a much higher profile and is a much more valuable asset in the propaganda war as far as the Russians are concerned.
All right, then. Thank you so much, John Arise, Chief Correspondent, joining us from London.